All right, almost ready. Okay, we are live. Go ahead.
Good evening. Welcome to this open meeting of the Open Space Committee. This meeting is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signed into law March 29, 2023. All members of the Open Space Committee are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The act allows the Open Space Committee to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded and the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of this meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube and follow the link there. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. Members, when I call your name, could you acknowledge verbally? Paul Cacciatore?
Present.
Dan?
Here.
Leslie?
Here.
Brian?
Here.
Ashley?
Here.
And Jacob Jones, welcome.
Present. Thank you.
Welcome. Okay, we have a quorum, so we're going to continue. And first item up is, in fact, acknowledging two new members. One is our select board liaison, Jacob Jones. I appreciate you making time for the meeting. I know you have a busy schedule, and unfortunately, we may often conflict on Mondays. But we are
Happy to be here, and I'm glad we didn't have a conflict this Monday. We certainly have plenty of meetings, but I'm so glad to be able to be with you all.
good for you. And the second is our planning board member is now Carter Brannon, newly elected to the planning board. I don't see Carter on, but congratulations to him getting elected to the planning board. And historically, the planning board member's been a active participant in the Open Space Committee, so I hope that he will find time to do the same. Next up, consideration of the minutes from our last meeting, which was way back in March 24, 2025. Does any member have a comment on the minutes or an edit? Hearing none, does any member have the wherewithal for a motion to approve?
So moved.
Appreciate that. Leslie, any second?
Second.
Paul, appreciate that. And I will call those who were at the meeting. All in favor, Leslie?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
And John is a yes. And Anthony was at the meeting but is no longer with us from the planning board. So that's all the members that were present. Minutes are approved. Okay, moving on. Probably our number one topic tonight to go through is discussion of potential study regarding the Bewalt and Aqueduct trails. And for those not familiar or new to the meeting, Bewalt stands for Boston Worcester Airline Trail, and it is an effort to rejuvenate a walking trail along the path that used to be a train route years ago. And the section in Northborough is essentially along Route 9, crossing the Route 20 interchange south of the Wegmans Plaza. But there's the potential to connect this with the Aqueduct Trail or with the existing Aqueduct Trail access, and someday over the Aqueduct Bridge. And it's that potential and the overall opportunity that we want to talk about. This has been on our agenda before. Ashley in particular was instrumental in trying to get an effort for a study to be granted under CPA funds. We did not have the right information or support from the state water MWRA at the time. I think that was about 2 years ago. But more recently, we've had some encouragement from our neighbor in Westboro, a man named Don Byrne, who is well known in open space and trail circles. And he believes he has some new momentum. There's in particular momentum in Westboro to develop a study to develop this trail. And then the connections that Northborough would allow that could bring it to other trails is where the interest lies. As a matter of history, Don went before the planning board and subsequently before the select board in January. And I have part of his presentation ready to display for the committee and for anyone listening. And I'm going to ask Ashley to help me present the high points of this, if that's okay with her.
Sure.
And welcome Carter Brandon, who has joined us. Nice to see you.
Hello.
Welcome to the Open Space Committee. Nice to have you. So having said that, what do you think, Ashley? Can I share my slides and have you chime in?
Sure. Yeah,
work?
I haven't seen
Okay.
them, but I'm sure
Yeah, I think you'll follow it.
it'll be fine.
So bear with me while I figure out how to do this.
So John, just go down and hit the green share button down at the bottom of your screen. And then
Yep.
from there you can select your PowerPoint slides and make them full screen. Just let me know if
Yep.
you need hands.
Thank you. Okay, here we go. Hold on a moment, I'm going to back out and full screen it first from my side. Bear with me. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that.
Yeah, maybe it's a PDF. It doesn't
See what
allow you to do
happens.
that.
Okay, we'll go back to old school.
While John's bringing that up, I will just say that the update that Don provided was that he's met with the select board, and these are the slides he shared with them. He's also met with Lori Connors and Amy Pretsky most recently, and they, in that discussion, decided to focus on the section of the Bewalt down by Northborough Crossing for now. I know at one point we had talked about an all-use trail that would connect up through Berlin to the Mass Central Rail Trail. But until the aqueduct bridge is complete, they don't want to spend time on that. So once the aqueduct trail is complete, or the bridge is complete, then we would see if we can work with MWRA to focus on the aqueduct trail. But for now, just focus down near Northborough Crossing.
Sorry to interrupt you, Ashley. Just to orient those, there's a couple of maps here. Here's the first one. The Bewalt Trail path is essentially red and following with my mouse along this line. These spurs that go up, this would be the potential connection into Northborough's aqueduct trail network. And then this spur here, I'm not sure of, Ashley, are you?
That is the aqueduct, I believe. There are a couple pieces. I think the way he has it is connecting through the wildlife management area there in Westboro and
Okay.
Northborough, because that's part of their, what is it, the bracelet or the necklace trail through Westboro? I can't remember, but that's probably what he's using in the bottom, the southeast corner of Northborough. But then the aqueduct is continues up from there.
We'll go to the next map. See if this helps.
Sure. So this is the section that we'd be focusing on. And Don said first step would be a feasibility study, but which would identify which easements are possible and which avenues are possible on this trail. It's pretty straight, but he said there's about 5 to 10 landowners that we'd potentially have to work with to get easements to make this happen. But the feasibility study is something that we could potentially get covered through a Mass Trails grant, a Massachusetts Rec Trails grant. So I think that would be the first step. He did offer to put together the feasibility study himself, but I'm not sure of all the legalities around how the town has to do that, especially if they're going for a grant.
These are the two aqueduct connections that you mentioned previously, blow-ups for the Northborough portion.
Yep, and it goes right near the high school. Yeah.
This is somewhat summarizing what you were just getting into, Ashley.
Yeah, so the Mass Trails grant, I think, can fund feasibility and design. Yeah, that's what he says there. And I'm just not sure when the easements would have to be figured out. You know, I would assume that if you're applying for funding for the design of the trail, you'd want the easements nailed down first. So that might be our biggest challenge. First step feasibility study, that should be fairly quick. I don't know, 6-month process maybe, but easements, that would take a lot of landowner outreach. And I don't know, I know Sudbury Valley Trustees is on the list for another landowner outreach that we're going to discuss later, but I wonder if they may be interested in working with us on that as well, because they just have more experience with working with landowners on easements, but also Northborough Trails. I mean, you guys do a lot of that too, so I don't know. What do you think, Brian? I think this is mostly like commercial landowners, though. That's the only thing I don't. I think you're on mute. Oh, sorry. Okay. And just
Sorry, I'm just having some trouble unmuting myself on the phone. From a trails perspective, dealing with the landowners, it's usually secondary after like the legality part and the easement's already been established. I'll fully admit it's not really an area of my expertise, but we're certainly all pretty enthusiastic about the project. So perhaps I just need to up my game a little bit.
Well, I guess it's a question for the town. Like, does Lori want to spend time putting together an application for Mass Trails funding for a design when we don't know if the easements are going to happen and if they're possible? But again, like, we could volunteer to put together majority of the application as well. So, but I think it's an easy decision to see if we can work with Don on getting the feasibility study going, and get grant funding for that. I will say that we did talk with Scott Charpentier at one point about TIP funding, which Don notes down here. And that's sort of a really long process to get a list. Like, the town puts together a list for that funding, they submit it to the state. So we'd really need to have full town buy-in way ahead of time to get that funding. It sounds like the Board of Selectmen is interested, so maybe there's momentum already, but I just wanted to note that.
Ashley, could we as a committee or individuals help with the grant
Yeah, I mean,
preparation,
I
or does
think
that just have to be from town staff?
that's a good point. Could the Open Space Committee just submit the Mass Trails grant directly? I can look into that. I have never worked with that grant program because I didn't really work on trails, but I can certainly look into it.
Very good. I'll go to the next slide, see what we got. Slide 2.
So I don't know much about Westborough's project, but I know that they have a lot of excitement and they've made a lot of progress. And I think Don did put together the feasibility study for Westboro, but what I'm not sure of is if they actually went and did hire a consultant afterwards. There was something around that I remember happening. So I'll inquire with Don as to their process and just confirm. Because I don't think he has like an LLC or anything. He's just a private citizen working on this.
I think part of what he was promoting to our town is that Westboro is a bit ahead in the process,
Mm-hmm.
but he was seeking Northborough's willingness to collaborate.
Yeah.
And he got that with, some support both from the planning board and the select board.
Ashley, can I ask a question?
Sure.
When you mentioned that it was near the high school,
Yeah.
is it back behind the fields of the new complex? Is that the spacing we're talking about?
Yeah. I mean, I think it
Go
goes
back
right
on that,
through
so-
where there's been all of the lawsuit with the commercial property coming in. So you see that right above Bartlett Street.
Yeah.
That's where it could connect up behind the high school. So north of Bartlett Street that's the big complex of fields. That's what I recall anyway. Yeah.
The reason why I bring that up is I'm on the athletic complex committee,
Mm-hmm.
and the backfield was never part of the complex behind the second multi-purpose field.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of land back there, and it basically falls off a cliff.
Oh, wow.
and so I can't see honestly the high school ever using that land going any further from that field.
Yeah.
It would be the abutters next to it that might have some issue, but it's actually the perfect space for something like this. Because the high school would not be utilizing that. The only thing I can think of that might impact is just making sure that we're not impacting the cross-country team. Because I know that a lot of their running trails are back behind that field.
Yeah.
But if we're north of that, I know there's no plans whatsoever to go any further than that underdeveloped third field that's in the back there.
So I think the way I would see this, so it's all the way this is shown right now, the red is all on the aqueduct.
Okay.
So it would stay on the aqueduct, but it could benefit the high school if the high school wanted to put in a trail connection to this, which could benefit the cross-country team or kids that wanted to walk to school potentially, although that's kind of a roundabout way, just by using this trail. But I think it's really that, like anybody who wants to walk further or go from the fields and take a long walk along the aqueduct trail, I think that's where you'd see it. But again, I think you'd need an easement because that commercial property is between the high school fields and the aqueduct.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And it does pass by the baseball fields as well, Memorial Fields, and then up to Berlin.
Anything that's running along existing fields in the town to me is a win.
Yeah, it's great. It connects so many different things. So it has a lot of great potential. I'm trying to think. This shows, I
Sorry,
think it shows where it goes over the aqueduct bridge as well, but
in this second part to the right.
oh yeah, okay.
And again, taking the big picture into it, that's really where Don was trying to drive us to. Because if we do take on more use of the aqueduct trail and the aqueduct bridge project progresses, then you have the potential to go north of Northborough and connect with the Central Mass Rail Trail, and that's sort of the big goal for going
Yeah.
northward from you, right?
Yeah, and the exciting part is that the Mass Central Rail Trail is nearly complete. I mean, I think they have 99 miles out of 108 already in progress, under agreement.
Whoops.
Pretty exciting.
Here you go.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Could you back up a couple slides? Yeah, that's the one where I was trying to see what we're missing to connect up to there. Sorry, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah, so the red through Northborough is existing trails, but we don't have permission from the MWRA to make that aqueduct trail paved or crushed stone at this point. So it's just grass, which is fine. But in terms of an all-use trail, if people wanted to ride bikes or handicap accessible, we would potentially work with the MWRA to try to get approval for that. But right now it's certainly walkable and people do walk it, and it already connects up to the Mass Central Rail Trail in Berlin.
Now, excuse me, but one of the interesting things that Don Byrne brought up during his presentation at the select board that I recall is he felt he had made some progress with his contacts at MWRA about getting permission for what you just described. Actually, it kind of crushed us a couple of years ago that
Yeah.
we were being told you really can't do anything on the grass, but he really was optimistic that viewpoint was changing.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. I'm going to move this forward because he had some more things to point out. Okay. Well, there you go. Point 1 is what I just mentioned.
There you go. Yeah, so I mean, I will definitely look into the Mass Trails Grant program and see if we can just submit the application ourselves and what we actually need to submit it, because I assume there will be a checklist of items that we might need to gather from town staff. But I don't see why we couldn't compile it ourselves.
It'll certainly be helpful to staff who's
Yeah.
generally busy with a lot of other grants.
Right.
So,
In a
Let's see
letter,
if-
he says, a
let's see if
letter
I can-
to,
whoa, did I do this right? No, it's doing the other way. Pardon me? Okay.
I think this,
So-
the select board did submit a letter of support for him, the Northborough
Correct.
Select Board.
Planning board had already done so,
Okay,
and then, Jesus, I apologize. I hit the wrong
that's right. I think we made it through.
button, and
I think we're good.
I wanted to highlight the letter from the select board, which did in fact come through. Why won't it come up? There it is. So a result of the January appearance was that the Northborough Select Board did in fact vote unanimously, and this letter went out to Westborough's Select Board and Planning Board, highlighting our interest in collaborating.
John, one thought for the group. So I have some limited experience with the Mass Trail Grant program. So one thing that is required with every application is a landowner permission form. So you have to submit that with the grant.
Even for a feasibility study.
No, well, I don't know. I mean, if you're trying to get money from the Mass Trails Grant Program, I don't know if they distinguish between just conceptual or actually doing work. But one of the requirements is for wherever the trail's going, the underlying landowners or owners must each submit a permission form.
Okay, and you do need 20% match, it says. So we'd need to either allocate that from our fund or get approval from CPA or something like that.
What's the ballpark you think for funds required for this?
It shouldn't be a huge amount, but honestly, it always surprises me how much people charge a town. So, I don't know. And that would be a question, like, can Don be the one who puts this together? Do we want him to be? Because obviously that would be a different cost. This may be low enough that it doesn't have to go through the regular RFP process. So I just really don't know. I think what I would do, if you want me to look into this, is call up SVT and talk to Dan Stimson over there and just get his feedback, because this is what he does. He just does all the he did the, what was it? The Tri-Town Trail. I can't remember what it was called. The one with Marlboro and
The Burroughs
Burroughs
Loop.
Loop Trail. Sorry.
It'd be great if you could take that on, so.
Sure.
We most likely won't meet again until September, but first of all, we tried to have Don participate in this meeting, but we just couldn't get the dates to click. But perhaps with a little more time and, whatever input you can bring back to the next meeting and give him some notice, maybe we can have him on in September and then take his enthusiasm, which is always a bit contagious, and help get us pushed in the right direction. And then maybe two, a goal of that meeting could be to determine, do we need to apply to the CPC, or do we need to, do something else for the next phase?
Mhm.
I think the other thing to think about, obviously, we have two new members. Obviously Jacob being from the select board and Carter. I want them to be comfortable with this too, since I believe they both joined after these letters were sent.
Hmm.
And I just think it's fair to them to make sure we bring them up to speed on, what, obviously Mitch had his hand in this one pretty heavily, but also just making sure they understand what we're asking about, answering any questions that they may have as well. That would make me feel a little bit more comfortable knowing that the new administration and plus Carter understand what we're asking for and why we're asking for it. It's fairly self-explanatory, I think, although there are some complications, as Ashley mentioned, with the homeowners, and likely those types of complaints will come to Jacob and or Carter. So I just want them to be rehearsed enough to know what we're asking for and why.
Well, just to clarify, I don't think there are any homeowners along this section, which is a small section between Route 9 and Northborough Crossing. It's like that interchange
Okay.
area.
If I could jump in
Sure. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, no, thank you, Paul. And I appreciate being brought up to speed. I actually, in sort of getting myself up to speed on the select board, I think I watched this meeting actually, and I was really impressed with Don and his proposal. So I think you could count on me being right in line with where the select board was before. And I only can't speak for everyone. We haven't discussed this since I've been on, but I'm pretty confident that the select board will be continuing the same direction and support that we were on this project. I have my questions, which are not super critical at this point, and I think premature, are things like, would certainly love to the extent possible and feasible and within reasonable costs to the town, be able to upgrade and provide, so some of these trails could be bikeable, especially if it's connected. I think that's a great direction to go to. As far as the landowners here, I mean, I don't have a personal connection with any of them, but it looks like one of the bigger properties is behind the hotel that's being redone by a new property owner. And I'm just spitballing here. Seems to me that's a pretty good amenity to a hotel to advertise that we're also stay here and you're connected to a great trail system right on, essentially going through our property, the back of the property. I don't know. So, and then there's, I think Chase Bank is on that. I'm just looking at the map and trying to figure out where these properties are. But I think it's worthwhile to not give up and at least. I don't operationally, I'm not sure how we do it, and hopefully we can figure out a solution for how we approach them. Like I said, I don't have a personal contact with any of them, but I think if we know people who do have those personal contacts, some way to reach out and just say, and I don't know, maybe if we did have hey, would you give us at least permission to seek funds to come up with a design? And then we look at the design and see if you'll then give us permission to do the design on your property. Like I said, the hotel, it seems like a no-brainer. I don't speak for the owner, but I can't see why there's a downside to have a trail going near a property. But maybe I'm not seeing something. Anyway, I just wanted to jump in and maybe address some of your thoughts there, Paul. But I'm totally on board. I like the idea. Don was, as you say, contagious in his enthusiasm, and yeah.
Thanks, Jake. Yeah, it's a really good point. It's an odd trail, if you will, when you look at it, knowing how much activity and traffic is in that area. Clearly, Westboro sees that without Northborough participating, they can't make the connection to Shrewsbury and move it on.
Mhm.
And there's been talk among the towns about this for several years, but it's good to see some momentum. I think we can find the resources for the study from one source or another and not place a burden on any one area in our budget and so on. Any other comments? Floor's open, just chime in, people.
On a plus side, I think there is positive movement on the Aqueduct Bridge as far as connectivity goes. My understanding was that the engineering firm did their first round of looking at it and didn't come back with anything saying it wouldn't be able to move forward. So that's a good step in what's been several decades of trying to get some connectivity there.
That's good news.
Most of this route, I mean, outside of the Route 9 stuff, most of it follows the connectivity is via the Aqueduct Trail. So
good to hear progress. I think last we heard they were waiting for better weather to get into it. So I'd not heard a thing, but this is from a now 3 or 4 year old town meeting approved program, right? And
yeah,
so it's good to hear progress finally.
at least that's my understanding, but I'll verify that.
Excellent.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a quick question on that? Was that a previous warrant article that we're working on closing out, getting completed? Or is it a different situation? The reason I ask is because one of the things we have talked about as the select board is working with Jason to try to see where we're at on old articles, that anything we can do to push them into completion and close them out, is something that a couple of us have been working to do. I don't know if this fits in that category. Or
It definitely does. This was
I think I remember seeing it on the spreadsheet Jason gave us, is why I
Right.
was like, this is tingling my memory here from not too long ago.
the restoration of travel over the bridge is really what the project was, and it goes back round number of years, 5-6 years. There was a phase 1 approved at town meeting that paid for the initial engineering study to find what needed to be done, and then this was phase 2 approved. I should remember the year, but it's probably 3 years back, town meeting. But getting traction to approach the aqueduct has always been a challenge. Someone from MWRA has to be in the loop. I'm paraphrasing because it's not something that I've personally been involved in, but it usually involved the town planner, Kathy Jubert, before we had Lori, and so on. So I'm just glad to hear any glimmer that now we're finally getting into what's going to be required to do the work.
If I may, I remember we talked about it. And I can't remember, it seems to me that there was some reason that was given of what was holding this one up. We kind of were addressing a lot of pending items at once, and so I don't have particular, there was something, but we were given, I think by our DPW director, if I'm recalling correctly, a little some reassurance, and maybe it was Stephanie, about stressing to push these along and do any outstanding items that the town needs to do, get them done so no one's waiting on the town. That was a kind of directions that we gave on those. So I don't know if it's going to help, but we're going to try.
No, but you're accurate. This is certainly one of the open CPA projects.
Okay.
And still, still ongoing. I can't predict how much longer, or I don't have a financial report on what's been spent. Jason Little, our finance director, would have that, but nice to hear momentum. Any other comments or questions on the Dewalt Trail feasibility item? Very good. Hearing none, I guess we'll move on to the agenda. Next item up is to discuss our landowner outreach efforts and SVT collaboration. So for our two new members, just a bit of a summary. For many years, obviously, the Open Space Committee has tried to reach out to those in town who might be interested in preserving their land. This, in essence, is the core mission of the Open Space Committee. And we've been successful in many parts of town in preserving large tracts or extending conservation land or extending trail networks. And we have tried to rejuvenate the effort of being proactive on a regular basis. Vinny, who's been our liaison to staff for a couple of years now, has been very good in organizing those efforts. And he's produced a spreadsheet, which was copied to the membership prior to the meeting. We've adopted a policy during our meetings of not mentioning landowner names or addresses in our discussions of where we stand on communications with any prospective landowner. And so we've been referring to the spreadsheet by line number and occasionally updating a property or adding a property and so on. Related to this, in the last few weeks or month, Vinny was contacted by a member of Sudbury Valley Trustees. Ashley used to work for them. She can take over at any time, but they've obviously been a collaborator with Northborough for many years, helped us with acquiring parcels, in some cases helped us with conservation restriction on those parcels. But the particular staff member there was reaching out to offer to help with the activity of approaching landowners trying to rejuvenate interest. And they had generated some, they looked at Vinny's information. They had mentioned, particular owners and particular parcels and asking, could they get involved, send a letter on behalf of SVT and try to jumpstart things. I'd like to get the committee's response. My personal thought at first was, first of all, we would not do this unless the committee agreed that this was a direction that would be helpful. And second of all, since we have been now regularly sending out a round of letters as recently as last year, would it confuse things or would it help? And how do people feel if SVT wanted to jump in and join the effort, if you will, and start sending some of their own communications, of course, referencing Northborough, but how do you think that would go? We talk a lot about the sensitivity of the subject. It's not something where you generally can be pushy to a landowner in town. They have to come around on their own to the idea that they'd like to have their land preserved in perpetuity as opposed to selling it, and it may involve family members and so on and so forth. So I wanted to open the floor to that question. Should we let SVT kind of jump in and try to do what they're asking or just continue to discuss it?
I think we should, because our
the results of our outreach have never been great. So SVT might have would be my vote.
Yeah, I mean, I think the name and the materials just lend credence to the outreach, so people take it a bit more seriously, maybe. I don't know, but they also are full-time staff, so they can put more effort into this than us and turn it around more quickly and maybe, continue following up or maybe have events and things like that. Whereas, we're volunteering here, so it's a little trickier. Plus, if they do get if we were to get traction, we'd probably reach out to them anyway for partnership in terms of fundraising and funding. They have access to more sources than us as a 501c3. But if they were to do the outreach, they can automatically plan for that if they're getting traction.
Yeah, I'm generally a fan of the work that SVT's been doing, with a few caveats about some overly strict CRs, but generally speaking, they're pretty persuasive with landowners, and they got some good resources and some really talented folks. So I can't see much of a downside in getting some of their assistance.
I'm all for it. The more help, the better.
And there's no cost to us.
No, they're offering their time for the outreach. And the form that was offered initially, if I understand it, was, a letter and possibly attaching or linking materials. I'm not sure if they were talking about physical mail. I think they were. But from my experience, and Ashley, back me up, when we've had projects with their collaboration, it is rare that SVT is offering funds for the acquisition of these properties. They do get involved in some big time programs, but that really isn't what they're offering. They're offering the effort because they know that Northborough has involvement and has been successful. They're offering to help us be successful again. They're offering their expertise. Let's just say, hypothetically, a parcel of land becomes available and we figure out a way to acquire it and get approval. They could offer their time and resources to create and even hold a conservation restriction, which has a value because there's some cost there. But in previous efforts, they have stopped short of saying, we'll give you X toward the project. It's not that they don't have some resources, but for the scale of things that we're talking about on our list, they had traditionally not offered cash. Is that fair to say, Ashley?
I mean, yeah, the way it typically works is that the largest source of funding for any land protection project is going to be the town. And that's the way it works all over the state. The state CPA and state land grant is the largest source of funding for land conservation in the state of Massachusetts. So that's where the majority of funding comes from. They do have a great track record of getting land grants. So they will put together the application and apply for the town with the town's consent and partnership. And then fundraising campaigns, they're very good at running, but they'll run in the, $100,000 range. It's not like a huge campaign, and really it depends on the town. And in Weston and Wellesley, you're gonna have a different level of campaign. You know what I mean? So, but the foundations that support land conservation in Massachusetts, really the grant sizes are like 15,000, 25,000. They're not big, 50,000, but they regularly get grants from those. So they contribute in small ways. But as John noted, they also have their own costs that they're fundraising for in each of these projects too. So there's a line item there. And if they're holding a CR, they'll have a stewardship endowment for the property. And so they'll fundraise for that too. So yeah, majority of the funding would come from CPA, land grant, community partnership grant.
Did they front all the money for the Horseshoe Pond acquisition in Berlin so they could get that purchased and conserved and the town effectively paid them back.
Yes, I was going to mention that too. They do have a revolving fund. And I don't think they charge interest. And if they do, it's very small, like 1%, 3% tops. I don't know. But it's yeah, they can lend out their revolving fund so they can pre-acquire as the town, if the town needs more time, either to apply for funding from the state or, get a town meeting vote for the CPA allocation. So they can do things like that to kind of enable a deal.
Seems useful.
So I'm hearing a lot of positivity. And as Brian said, doesn't seem like there's any downside. I'm hearing members not concerned that a particular person gets too many reminder letters that their land, there's an opportunity to have their land conserved. So
Would
we could, well, let me offer a suggestion. We could report to Vinny from this meeting that there was interest in getting together, and we could have Vinny communicate with regard to our outreach list as to which of them, would be good targets to do this, candidates, I should say, to send these out to. And then perhaps at our September meeting, we could come prepared to review that list and the outreach letter and maybe give either our feedback or our approval at that point to move it to the next level. What does everyone think? Yes, Jacob?
I'm in support of the suggestions you just gave. Just one additional kind of commentary on your previous question. So I think I don't see really any downside with having SVT help us. I was just reviewing their strategic plan through 2029 and their goals on their own website. It would be interesting to me. I think you've answered, and I appreciate you kind of reading my mind of what my questions were. It's interesting to me to know, like, what are they hoping to get out of this? And I think you've already answered it, Mr. Campbell. And their strategic plan includes over the next, long-term goal is to have another 45,000 acres essentially under their umbrella, and that includes things like purchasing the actual restrictions themselves. And so it seems like possibly an idea they may have is if they can identify a property, town acquires it, and instead of us having to pay them to hold the restriction, they don't potentially, I'm just reading their strategic plan, potentially they would buy the right to hold the restriction, which lets them count those acres on toward their goal. Unless I'm missing something, because I always want to hear something like this. I'm like, if they're offering to do us something for free, what are they hoping to get? That's my
nothing at
Yeah,
all.
yeah.
So their goal is, as a land trust goal, is to conserve land for biodiversity, and that's their goal. They can count the acres as an assist, even if they don't hold any interest. So they can do that regardless. So if they help
Okay.
the town and the town purchased the land but wasn't interested in giving a CR to Sudbury Valley trustees, they would still count that as an assist. The only thing is they would rather have there be an extra protection layer when the gas transmission line came through this region about 10 plus years ago. The lands that had double layers of protection, so whether they were owned by towns or the state under Article 97, they were still at risk of having the transmission line come through. But if there was a conservation restriction placed on there as well, the land trusts were able to stand up and say, no, this is a conserved area. So they were able to fight the transmission line where there was the double layer of protection. So that's where they would probably want that, but they don't require it to say we've assisted. So, and count it toward the acreage.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was just looking back at the communication from SVT, and it was from a Meredith Houghton, a senior protection specialist. And it looks like they have generated a huge updated land database. It is a ranking tool for prospective properties for conservation. And it seemed like out of that effort, they had created what they thought were high priority properties in Northborough, and that's where some of the communications were going on with Vinnie.
Yeah, the state put out, I think, Biomap 3 last year, or the year before, and
Yeah,
they've done a few things with the Nature Conservancy to determine areas where wildlife can migrate with climate change, and so climate resilience. So the data continues to be updated, so I'm sure they're just using the latest to make sure they have the highest priority lands identified.
I thought that map was really cool. Is there any way to know, or is it just totally proprietary, like what the scoring criteria are?
Oh
I
yeah,
just-
I bet they'd share that with us.
I mean, it's fine if it isn't. I just was curious. I was looking at it and I was like, I thought that property would be scored higher or lower, and I wonder what the scores are based on.
Yeah, the last time they did it, they had a whole presentation around how they prioritized, so we could probably ask them for that.
Sorry, just that's more in the category of curiosity. I think.
Yeah, no, it'd be interesting to see.
Yeah.
what if we had Meredith even appear at our meeting? What do you think?
I'm sure she would love it.
That would make a
I think
Make
making
for
the
a-
ask is good. I think I would make that ask. If
Okay.
anything, it shows her that we're serious.
Well, great, and it let's assume she might be interested if the timing works, and then in the meantime, between she and Vinny going down the list, they could come prepared to say, here's the outreach we're thinking about, here's the message. Maybe it would be specifically written for different property owners, but we in the past arrived at more general language, just promoting the benefits and letting them know that the Northborough Open Space Committee is interested in helping, and there's resources available. So that is the message I'll give to Vinny.
And John, how do you want, did you say you wanted feedback on which properties on that list we think are top priority for us? Like, do you want us to email Vinny, just kind of letting him know feedback?
Sure, I think any specifics along those lines for sure.
Just any like information or feedback comments?
Correct.
Okay.
And Vinny copied me on an email from them, and they had already looked at several specific candidates and had made comments. Some we've already covered here in previous meetings. Some are subject to outreach we've already done, including appraisals for land. And if you recall, some of those efforts have not produced cooperation from the landowners, or at least not yet. So there's cases where I think as a committee, we can comment, that particular landowner might not be worth it at this time, or something else about a property that we know more about than the SVT volunteers do. But beyond that, I think the rest of it is probably more wide open.
If I could just add one more comment, while I'm liking these ideas, I'm always also trying to think of both sides of it. I would never want to see, and I don't think they ever would do this. I haven't seen their sample letters, but I would never want a resident of ours to receive a letter that seems to sound like the town is trying to bully them into doing something. And I'm sure they wouldn't do that. But that would just be I just want to make sure none of our residents are feeling bullied, of course, which I don't see any sense of that, but I just wanted to throw that out there as always something in the back of my mind. I wouldn't want that.
Yeah, we can also ask to approve the letter before it goes out. We've done a joint one before, but I don't know, sometimes it's almost better when it's not coming from the government.
Yeah.
Even if it is the local government,
Sure.
so it's worth a shot, but
I kind of agree with that. I just am
Yeah.
like, but also because we're not controlling it, they may say whatever they want to, and I may look at it and I may get one, and I'm like,
Yeah.
did I?
yeah, we could
this?
ask
You
to
know?
take a look. Yeah.
So don't want to micromanage them, and I'm sure they're professional, and I'm sure they're fine. But again, I just am, cognizant of not
It's a very,
wanting to have a proper tone.
If we were working with them, I'm almost certain they wouldn't send anything out to a Northborough resident without us reviewing it first. They're pretty professional. I mean,
Yeah, I'm sure
Yeah,
they are. I just wanted to make sure I kind of said that.
I would think our goal for the next meeting, regardless of whether there's attendance in person or not, but our goal would be to review a draft letter and bless it at that meeting. And we've gone over these kinds of letters before. And your point's well taken, Jacob. We try hard to keep them very informational, encouraging about what the options are available in the world of conservation options. We've linked and sent related materials. There's some excellent guides that have been written in the state. And, we brought forth experience, and we tried to show that there's other parts of the land in town that we've been successful in collaborating with the owners and acquiring either ownership or a conservation restriction, and, things such as that. So as someone just said, their SVT is pros at this even more so. And I'm sure we can arrive at joint language that, and they'll be, I would assume, bring forth their great experience and successes, and then link the fact that you've got a willing town partner that you can contact, things like that. So, but a very good point. And it may, it takes years, and sometimes it's successful, and sometimes nothing happens. And people that don't own land for generations and family, it's a long-term thought process decision involving multiple family members or entities.
I guess kind of question is like what kind of things would SVT maybe be able to say differently than this committee or the town?
Yeah, I mean, they understand the process really well, so they would be able to lead a landowner through the process. They're pretty well versed in legal aspects of it, estate planning, what the steps are, what they need to do, survey, appraisal, like all of these different things, how to draft a conservation restriction, and what a landowner can and can't, ask to be allowed to do even after they sell their rights, and all of these things. So they can kind of sit with a landowner and really assure them and have them feel comfortable with the steps before they even make a decision to do anything. So I think that's really the benefit, is they have that expertise and they can provide that. I did it. So I have that. I guess I could do that as an open space committee member, but I also have a full-time job. So I probably, it's hard to do that. And also it's been, 5 years. So there could be changes in, the legal situation and the process at the state level. So it's good to have them, they're doing this all the time.
Even when we've sent communications out, we've sometimes included SVT's literature with it.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Great question by Mr. Brandon, and it prompted another quick one, if I may ask, Ashley. Do you know if SVT has any in-house, and I'm going to botch the name of the title, but forest management planners, the folks who can help you with the forest management plan, or someone they could at least do an initial consultation with the property owner to go in that direction if someone were interested?
Yeah, the director of land protection, or what is her title? Director of land conservation, has been doing land stewardship for, I think, since the late 80s. She's great. She runs this large program in central Massachusetts around land management and invasive species. But often when it's like if it's for forestry itself, like they'll bring in a forest planner to do that actual plan. And there's some local names I know they use. I wasn't involved in that side of things, but I know they would bring in a forester to kind of do the planning for them.
Thanks.
I mean, do we have like copies of whatever communications we've sent out in the past? I mean, I'm just thinking like if another round of communications is getting sent out, is there a way to make sure you're not just sending the same letter with a different, header
Yeah.
on it? That might people just, if they ignored the first one, probably will ignore it again.
That's a good point. I will try from my own record, or if not, Vinny will forward to the committee and then, you know, specifically for you, Carter and Jacob, you can see the last round of letters that we sent and just generally what the language is, what the linked resources were. And then to your point, I would want to look at the same thing. How does SVT plan to juice it up and, you know, maybe just generate a glimmer of interest? Oh, SVT's contacting me. This must be, you know, better than I thought, or whatever, right? So I'll send that on to you guys. Well, good. I think we then have general agreement that I'll encourage Vinny to pass on that we would definitely like to collaborate, see if we can get them to agree to join the meeting and present that effort. And in the meantime, bring forth a draft letter or draft strategy. And at the same time, as Ashley pointed out, if anyone wants to go through the list and bring comments back to Vinny, let's make an effort on this group of properties specifically, and so on. Not to ignore the updating of the list, which we kind of look at every meeting, but does anyone have a specific update or addition or comment on any line item in the landowner list? Right, Carter?
I mean, just something I'm been, you know, the planning board's been talking a bit about the Westboro State Hospital property that the state owns, and that the state is kind of making some changes with some of the property that it owns that has previously been open space and is now interested in selling more of the property. And I'm not sure if this committee would have any thought on that. I know it's part of the trying to get more affordable housing and stuff in the state. But you know, so there's one property that they're putting up for auction, I think in September, and some of the communications that have come out, there may be more properties around the state. I'm not sure if any in Northborough are also being considered to also be sold. But if there's anything that the committee has any interest in working with the state with.
So I just answer your question, then I'll let others chime in. I'm aware of the discussion about the property, and I'm pretty sure I heard part of a planning meeting regarding its opportunity. From our committee's perspective, I mean, really any parcel of land that could be preserved from development is of interest to this committee. But we would then be digging in to see, does a parcel of land offer to add on contiguously to conservation land? Does it offer to extend any wildlife corridors? Does it offer to extend any trail network or, you know, or some other recreation opportunity? For instance, you know, does it have potential for a activity field or a sports field that would be a priority of the rec commission? And those kinds of things, if it had that interest, then we would carry the torch to, you know, either weigh in with a letter or bring the effort to the town to preserve it. Having said that, I'm not familiar with exactly where it is and exactly how big it is. Are you?
So the property itself that's being auctioned is about 5 acres. It's so where the hospital used to be, you know, there's like Lyman Street, and then there's like the old abandoned road that goes up to where the old hospital was.
Right.
So it's that basically that like triangle there. It goes up. So
Okay.
the Westboro line is close to where the new buildings have been built. So that's the property that they're auctioning off. And I mean, I guess my, in addition to not specifically that property, but just, I guess my thought was probably most of that state-owned land would likely just remain as it is, as forever. But if the state is changing its kind of position on what it's doing with quite a large amount of land, if kind of being aware of that, the state might also be looking into more of their properties, of thinking about what else might go there.
Most of it's in Westboro, though.
So right now in September, this first round, there's one property in Northborough and one property in Westboro. So the kind of corner, basically it's basically between Lyman Road and the old, I guess, hospital driveway. That is the one that they're in Northborough that they're auctioning off. I'm not entirely sure where the Westboro property is that they're selling. And I think Westboro's trying to put a bid in to buy that one. But it's kind of, I know, like it's all, I mean, everything around that is owned by the state, and I know some of it is the wildlife area, some of it's something else. I know they built that new barn or whatever on another one, and then there's a couple other ones that I'm not sure if the state would sell them or not, but it's, I guess, kind of just something that's been going on, and I guess just even for the committee to be aware of in case additional properties are being looked for to be sold.
That's great. Thank you.
Has the planning board offered any direction yet for the town to follow? As an example, is it a piece that can be added to the available housing land? Or is it something like that, or has there been any talk?
So, if you want to
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
our board and your board both wrote a letter, and they were both fairly similar, but go ahead.
Yeah. But what the state is basically doing is they're auctioning off the land, and whoever buys it is required to build housing on it. And the housing and it is kind of, there's a back and forth over how much the zoning of our town would apply to whoever's building it. But the town's required to allow at least 4 units per acre on the property that's being sold. And then I think in our letter, we gave a pretty strong saying we want at least them to follow the inclusionary zoning that was recently passed. And I think the state is agreeing to that, is from what I've heard, maybe. I think that was, I guess, the biggest emphasis from the letters. The other things, I mean, we had a little bit of discussion over whether, what kind of housing we wanted built on the land, if it was going to be single family homes, if you were going to allow duplexes or other multifamily structures. I know when I at the most recent planning board meeting, something that where we were adding to the letter was a request that at least part of the property be held as some kind of common open space. But these are all, I mean, what authority the town actually has to kind of say, or what anyone would listen to the letters, is not clear. The state kind of can do what they want. Do you have any input, Jacob?
Yeah, nope. We said a similar thing. We said as it is, where it's a residential C, it's the Lyman Street property is right on the border of our town, and it's about 5.45 acres. As written, you theoretically could potentially get up to 2 units per acre if you were a creative developer. But the state law mandates that we allow 4 at a minimum. Our letter said we'll allow 4 at a maximum. In other words, 4 is what our letter said, which is the minimum for us to not be telling this the state things the law doesn't allow us to tell the state. I expressed my opinions on there about how I don't like the state telling us what we can do with our land within our jurisdiction, and the state can tell us that it's going to ignore all of our zoning, all that. But that's a different story, maybe for another day. What the DCAM property program, though, I would say is once DCAM that's the Department of something Massachusetts surplus land. It's who manages Massachusetts surplus land. If a property goes into this program, the Affordable Homes Act program of last year, you can basically guarantee you're not going to get a conservation restriction on that piece of land. That's, I guess, the takeaway for this committee. Because it has to be used for housing.
Fair enough. So I think for our committee's interest, it's not a candidate for conservation. It's good to have an update on it. But I would suspect we might look for opportunities for housing on it done in a responsible way. But you have to buy it from the state one way or the other, right? So.
Yeah, no, if anyone's interested, it's you should tell your friends and neighbors and developers, anyone we can have an influence over the auctions in September. And they tell us they're going to take the highest bidder that's consistent with their parameters, which the parameters, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, to jump in, are basically coming from the governor and the legislature, build as many houses as fast as possible so we can go to our next election cycle and say we built tons of houses for you, which is kind of whatever it is. But yeah, that's what that's who they're going to accept, is whoever's got the highest bidder that's going to accomplish that goal. That's what I understand.
Sure, that's not unexpected.
I guess what I'm thinking is, I mean, to consider like looking into what is owned by the state and wondering like what would conservation priorities on what's currently owned by the state in case the state is considering selling more property in Northborough, to be able to say like, okay, well, can you sell this and maybe keep this as a conservation thing? But yeah.
I mean, it's a good point. Vinny does such a thorough job. I trust he sort of has his radar, but could there be any other state parcels that offer an opportunity that aren't already conserved? I know we have conservation land in town that is state controlled, but we call it our own because it adjoins other lands that we've conserved. So it's a good point. Okay, very well. Anything else on specific land updates?
No, I was just gonna say quickly, I know when they first started talking about that land at Westboro State Hospital, I don't know, 10 years ago, maybe. I don't know. Everything seems like 10 years ago to me. I know the Westboro side had a lot more land, and some conservationists were hopeful that it would be conserved, but the town felt it was most appropriate for development. So there's one thing, 495 Metro West Collaborative does this sort of priority development, priority preservation areas maps in the region. And I think that area is identified as priority for development. But it would be, I think the maps are all accessible online, but it would be interesting to see what the Northborough side, what input we gave when that happened. It was a bit ago now.
Fair enough. Hearing no further comment, we'll move on toward the end of our agenda. Really, the only other item that I wanted to get out, Brian's still with us, so if you don't mind, can you give an update on the Trails Committee's work on the Whitney Street property?
Yeah, absolutely. So not, well, I think you might all remember a while back, I was sort of interested in doing some cleanup work out on 432 Whitney. But to loop back, we've, members of the Trails Committee walked the parcel numerous times, flagged out a preliminary trail, submitted that to conservation. At sort of the same time, I was interested in doing some cleanup work out there. Most of the debris is wooden pallets. There's a lot of old compost, some incidental trash and dumping, but as best I could tell, there's nothing, we didn't come across anything hazardous or anything really unusual beyond about 130 gigantic wooden pallets, which we basically dragged out of the woods, and we staged them all up along the gravel access road near the retaining wall. And I've been working with Scott Treppier about disposal options. And we think, well, Scott, anyway, sorry, long-winded. There's a bunch of trash out there that we'd like to get rid of because it's mostly an eyesore and it's just pretty horrible.
Are they decent pallets? Because sometimes, we use pallets to stack wood, so it's not something that you would take a pallet.
No, they're gigantic and they're rotted and they're not really useful in any fashion.
Okay.
I asked about burning them. Fire chief declined to allow us to burn them on site. Scottsy can get us dumpsters at contractor rate, which is $345 a piece. The Trails Committee had already budgeted for one dumpster for incidental cleanup, barbed wire, other stuff. Scott thinks it's about 4 dumpsters worth of material. I actually think it might be, it's possible it could be 5 or 6 dumpsters worth. I asked Vinny to ask the finance director if there were any available funding sources for this, and I didn't get a lot of positive results from that. I think just sort of as a general, comment, I think that collectively around town, we didn't need any like major remediation, but we managed to all budget and spend an enormous amount on the property, but we all sort of misfired in not setting aside any dollars to pay like a proper site management company to haul some trash out. Not the end of the world. It's just a little bit, a small oversight. Anyway, Trails Committee has declined to put any more financial obligation towards the cleanup. Once we get full approval for our trail from conservation, then we will certainly land one dumpster down there for incidental stuff. And as far as the cost of disposal for the rest of the things, not sure how that's going to progress. But that's the quick update.
Brian, isn't there some kind of liability that the town has to remove solid waste when they acquire property? I mean, aren't they going to be on the hook for this?
I don't know who they are, and
us as a town, like I don't know. That's just weird. Like DEP could be alerted, and I just feel weird about that we're not even like budgeting. It's not going to cost that much. Like, but I don't know. Like, is that DPW? Like, that's wild.
DPW was very gracious and volunteering to supply the logistics, dump to the contract rate, and supply the manpower. From a trails perspective, that's a really big ask. We generally the DPW is awesome to work with. They'll generally pick up small trailhead, parking lot debris, and other minor things. We rarely engage with them to do large scale cleanups or things that are going to require, multiple people and trucks and vehicles and whatnot. So sorry.
I mean, we have a contract with a waste management company, right? For town owned facilities.
We do. Yes.
It seems like there should be a way to just tag that on. I mean, this seems interesting. We own this property, right? The town?
We do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, so that's sort of point of discussion. I don't know the mechanics of figuring out, who could actually pay for this. It's not very much money. Again,
Right.
dumpsters at $345, probably, let's say worst case, 6 of them, of which trails will definitely pay for 1. So it's very small dollars in the grand scheme of things.
Brian, is there a wood recycling resource that's been pursued?
We actually looked into pricing out having a company effectively chip them with like an industrial grinder, which would have magnets, which would catch the nails and whatnot. We're waiting to get a full quote back from them, but I can almost assure you it'd be more expensive than 6 dumpsters at contract rate.
Well, I meant, is there a company that would basically buy the wood waste or take it away for free or something, because they're going to recycle it for a different purpose. I don't know that it exists. I just, if there was a way to recycle as opposed to quote unquote dumpsters, because you have no control where that's going to go. It's obviously going to go, maybe it goes and gets burned in our waste facility, or maybe it gets dumped,
Yeah, I'm aware of like pallet companies that do repurpose old pallets, but they only use good ones that are, easily taken apart, or ones that can be rehabbed for reuse. And these are none of the ones at the site are any good at all.
They're odd sized and in various degrees or states of condition, right?
Yeah.
Well, at any rate, I shared the screen of your proposed trail map that Vinny shared with us, and I wanted to give you the opportunity to make any comment on it. But looks interesting, because when I've gone over there, I mean, it's well overgrown now, so I've not ventured any further than the stack of pallets.
Yeah, the woods are pretty overgrown. It was a little more accessible in the spring before all the brush had come in.
Right.
And I have no doubt that by fall, when presuming all the NOI and wetlands permissions go through, by fall it would be walkable again and fairly straightforward to do physical work on.
The looking at the trail map, there's a feature at the southern end, and it looks like it comes to an end and turns around. Is there a potential scenic view at that point or something?
So at the far end of the trail is a little spur that would offer connectivity to the DCR-owned parcel that's immediately adjacent to the town-owned parcel. So what we wanted to do is extend our trail effectively right to the rock wall, right to the property line, so that if and when we can work with DCR on trail development on their property, we will already have a spur connection there.
Do you mean the section that goes to the far eastern edge at the southern portion? Because I was looking at the part that goes, I'm assuming the red line is the trail. And I'm looking at it on screen.
The southern spur goes to the DCR parcel.
Got it. Thank you.
Sorry, I was just reviewing the drawing.
It kind of goes up a hill there in that DCR parcel, or there is a hill, I guess.
Yeah, there's a moderate grade over there. I mean, on the plus side, the woods and the stuff around the beaver pond it's gorgeous back there. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful. The old gravel road and the sort of I would call it a compost highway at the beginning is fairly unattractive, but once you get past that and actually get out into the woods, it's quite impressive from a conservation perspective. Some of the most active beaver work that I've ever seen near a trail. It's pretty cool stuff.
Fantastic.
Hey Brian, what's the length of the trail that you have marked out so far?
I want to say it's like 1.2 miles.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry, go ahead.
I'm pretty sure I think I know the answer to this, but so it's this up is north on this, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So the northeast section, east northeast section, that contains the 4-acre cutout that they're doing for housing. Is that right?
I don't actually know the exact location of the housing cutout. I can only presume it would be within throwing distance of Whitney Street itself.
Okay, if we could just I'm just saying this is maybe stating the obvious, but before we finalize any trail plan, if we could just make sure we've overlaid because that's knowable information. I know the select board actually just recently signed the restriction, and there was a map that went with it, and it was oriented a little differently. That's why I'm not 100% sure. But there is a plus or minus 4-acre section that was set out for housing. I'm not. It's maybe it's perfectly compatible to have the trail go through that section. I just want to. Whoever's building on that is going to have topographic limitations and other limitations, and they probably want to know if we're putting a trail somewhere too. I'm just trying to make sure the left and right hand are all talking to each other.
Yeah, I've not seen the map that shows where the housing would go. The presumption would be that it would be up close to the Whitney Street end, and that all we would need is an access through that or next to it or around it to get down to the actual wooded parcel. Because that entire north section of that, like that red line, that's just it's a gravel road. Then it just goes adjacent to the railroad tracks. It doesn't actually dip into the woods until, I don't know, about halfway down.
Brian, if the Board of Selectmen signed a CR with the map, it should be a survey on record with that cut out. Because if it's for affordable housing, I would guess they'd surveyed it out.
Yeah, I know I saw a map. It's just like it's not. My memory isn't perfect on which section it was. It was fairly rectangular. I'm actually pulling it up right now. If you want to.
And isn't it
the conversation? I'm pulling it up right now, and I can have actually the answer before we're done here.
I'm not sure if Dan's still with us, but the Conservation Commission blessed this, did they not, Brian?
Yes. And then I believe one Marielle from our committee is working on wetlands NOI paperwork. But it's been given an okay as far as the preliminary layout goes.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Also, if the Board of Selectmen signed the CR, then that would mean that the Conservation Commission would have already signed.
Yeah, that could totally be true. And I'm looking at the map right now. It's essentially a rectangle in the north. Yeah.
Are you able to screen share
I
map?
could. I could.
Super useful.
I certainly could do that. Let me, if I can. Sorry, I didn't mean to take up time on this. I was just looking at it, and I was like, "Wait, I've seen this map, and we're doing something with that." And that's
I'm glad to hear it's been defined. I've been kind of eagerly awaiting learning where that border would fall.
I'm not sure if Dana, the host, needs to enable you, Jacob, to share.
I think
because I did not pull that up myself.
Usually I have to, but all right, it looks like you got that all squared away.
Is that working?
Yep, I'm seeing it.
So I'm sorry if it's not clear, but it's I'm trying to put it in the same orientation you had here. So it's just this upper corner here. So it looks like you're proposing part of the trail to go here. I'm not saying that that's an issue. I'm just saying that we probably should just be aware going forward if that's what the plan is.
Well, so that upper red line is just following the existing gravel road that's there.
Yeah. And so just to be clear, this is just area that was exempted from the conservation restriction in order for it to be consistent with the Warren article that said it's got to be used for conservation and affordable housing. So
yeah, that doesn't appear like it would interfere at all, as long as we're allowed, an access road somewhere adjacent to the developed parcel.
There you go.
Well, anyway, I just wanted to make sure all the hands are talking to each other.
No, that's great. I appreciate it. I want to make sure that Vinny sees that. So
thanks, Jacob. That was good to see. Thank you for the summary, Brian.
Absolutely.
And, kudos again to the great work of you Trails Committee members. and diving into it over there because it looks like a nice resource.
Thanks.
So, there's an agenda item following that says discuss town meeting results. I think this was a carryover, but there really isn't anything to discuss except that the town meeting did approve the CPA application for 200,000 more to be added to the conservation fund, which has been our resource for land conservation. And on top of that, the DCR did contribute their grant on the 432 Whitney property. And those monies went to the conservation fund, or will show in the conservation fund by agreement amongst us. And so that will replenish that fund fairly substantially.
How much was that, John? That was another 200?
Correct.
Oh, great.
So there's something north of 400 available in the fund, and I'm sure we'll continue to advocate to build on that, just as we have from the beginning of time, trying to get the town to agree to put money aside for land conservation, and it's been successful. That is all I have on the agenda. I have no other new business. Does anyone else have any points to bring up that were not already discussed? Feel free to chime in.
Well, I know just something that the planning board was asking about for the next couple meetings are any zoning amendments for the next upcoming town meeting. And I know just something that I was looking at back kind of to the Westboro State Hospital property was that there's the open space residential development bylaw that allows for, you can kind of get open space and allow for more, housing to be built on a property. And that only applies to the residential A and B districts. There's not, to my knowledge, anything similar to that for the residential C. And I noticed some of the large open space properties that are on the spreadsheet are in the residential C district. And I'm not sure if sometime in the future, if we want to look into if there are any zoning bylaws that, we might want to look into that would allow for, both development and conservation of some of those properties.
I appreciate you bringing it up. I was not personally aware of that distinction. I knew that the bylaw existed, but good to have you on the committee. You can keep advocating to expand it. I'm not sure what the parameters were that created the bylaw in the first place. There might have had to be some trade-offs. But maybe as you learn more,
I don't know either.
Certainly
But
bring
I'll
it
have to
forward.
look into that. Yeah.
Excellent.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes,
cognizant
sir,
of
Jake.
this time, not trying to delay this, but this is kind of in the way of a report, public service announcement related
Yes,
to
sir.
land. I want to make sure everyone is aware that the select board is in negotiations with Elegant Banquets with their lease proposal for the White Cliffs property. There's a little bit of misunderstanding, I think, out there in the wording that's used. It says the select board has awarded a contract. We've not awarded anything in the sense of no contract's been entered, no negotiations have been finalized. There isn't a concrete proposal. It's just as between the two proposals that were presented through whatever process the law says we have to go through. That's the one we're continuing on negotiations with. And the select board has another executive session for negotiation strategy for working on how we're going to approach that lease negotiation to hopefully have an acceptable package that takes into account all the town's needs. That would then be set for a special town meeting, and we're talking like September, October. Like we're talking near term. So I wanted to put that on everyone's radar and calendar, and email your select board. There'll be an open meeting, I'm sure, at some point to talk about it before, we set the agenda for the special meeting. Get there, tell the select board what you'd like to see with that. That's all.
I appreciate you bringing it up and trying to stay within the confines of the Open Space Committee. I'm not sure I can, but I will make one suggestion to you as a new select board member, in that when the prior respondents to the RFP before your time on the board came before the town, the circumstances were very different. But the one regret that I felt was that the town didn't make enough of an effort to discuss alternatives, options, things that might compromise what the town was getting versus what the town wanted. Again, different circumstance. And the reason I bring it up in this case is I have followed the recent RFP and listened to the presentation, as you may know. And the one thing that came out from Elegant Banquets, while they are very experienced in what they do, they were clear that they were not creating their proposal was not to create a multi-use property of varying things, but that they were in the wedding business. And I think that's probably good to be focused on that for this property. But I wondered, in the suggestion that I'll make now and probably put it in writing to the board at some point, is don't forget to negotiate for some citizen access or town access. Perhaps there'd be an agreement to that the town may use the facility, be it for a meeting or a public event, working with their management. But you would think that opportunity would be there if they're not conducting weddings 7 days a week. And I'll leave it at that.
And I won't go into detail. Definitely that we've heard lots of comments like that and taking those into account. Thanks. And anyone else, feel free to email us. We really want to not get into a special town meeting with a bunch of surprised residents who are saying we're not listening. So thanks. Sorry for stealing the pulpit there for a second, Mr. Chair.
It's okay. I kind of piled on, so I appreciate hearing the update. I think we're left with the only other item would be to mention and try to get confirmation that we're kind of back on schedule with the every 2 months, last Monday of the month schedule. And that would bring us to September 29, 2025.
Did we do
far
the
as
last,
everyone-
we do the fourth? I thought we did the fourth, so it would be it just
Yeah,
happened, it just happened to be 5 that month,
Good point. I'm just
the
looking at
22nd, I think.
I'm just looking at the map. So, yep, I mean, it's a good point. September 1st is Labor Day. It may have been why Vinny wrote the agenda with the 29th on it.
I mean, I'm available either one, but I just have the 22nd on my calendar from.
Appreciate it. At the moment, yeah, I'm available too. I guess, are there any conflicts people know of on either day?
Jacob,
And,
what about select board?
Not sure you have it out that far.
Oh, we just set our select board schedule through December, and it feels like we have a meeting every week. I'm looking. We have several. Anyway, you said September. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I missed the date.
So the options are the Monday the 22nd or Monday the 29th, which is the one shown on the agenda as a suggestion. Do either of those offer availability to you?
We were going back and forth on a couple of those dates. Let me just see what we ended up on. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I should know that, but
All right.
1 second. 29th is currently open. We're holding the 22nd for a select board meeting at 7, which they're now starting at 6 these days, but yeah.
Okay, well, given that one data point, I guess I'll suggest we go for the September 29, if that's okay with the majority of you.
Thanks.
And then
Here.
a special guest, right? We're going to invite, perhaps.
Yeah, we're going to invite the SVT as well as re-invite Mr. Don Byrne, even though we've covered the material, but we'll pursue both. There's no reason why we couldn't make time for each. So we'll go from here with the 29th being the recommended day. So be it. If no one has anything further, I'll love to hear a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Anybody want to second it?
Second.
Second.
Very well, thank you. I will call the roll to adjourn. Paul,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Ashley, if you're still with us.
Yes.
Thank you. Jacob
Yes.
and Carter.
Yes.
Thanks again, both of you, for attending and for everybody else's time. Have a good night.